We are here in Catalonia today at a private retreat hotel, meeting with Michael St.Clair. He is going to have a conversation with us about economics, the world activities, and what's going on in Astrology 2015 and beyond that into the future. We are in a suite that has 2 bedrooms, and there are 9 of these situations with single bedrooms, living areas, complete with fireplace and kitchenettes. But we're going to have our conversation out here on the balcony in this beautiful countryside. Hello, Michael. We're at this incredible location in Catalonia. Can you please tell us a little bit more about this area?
Oh, this is where I meet with my clients when we have our conversations. We're in the hills between Girona and the sea. Over there is the Mediterranean. That side, we're about 20 minutes, 25 minutes by car to the sea, and we like it here because this hotel treats us very well. It's a very private setting, and they look after our clients really professionally well. I mean, this is a high-end place, and our clients expect to be treated, accordingly.
I was here at the last meeting, and everyone really enjoyed their time together in this space and with all the information that you covered. One of the things that I found most fascinating was that several people wanted to know more about your colorful past, how you arrived at where you are today. And could you go into it? I know you don't like to talk about your past that much, but this is something that I think people would find of interest.
Okay, well, I think the part that the clients and friends had liked the most was the army days. It's very simple. I was given a chance to study law or political sciences, and the game plan was basically to go into diplomacy, which I later did anyway in some other manner by meeting the diplomats and some world leaders. I think we had mentioned that I spoke to Alexander Haig on several occasions. He became kind of a mentor. At some point he was long retired, and I was a very young man. I'm talking now 20 years ago or something. I'm now 55. And between military guys, one recognizes each other even when you wear a normal business suit. There's something about the education and the way you behave and carry yourself. So anyway, instead of studying law and political sciences, I started studying, but I really hated every moment of it, mainly because I was seeing that I was going to be used in a system of which I knew is going to be obsolete, and I didn't want to become a pawn of the system. And when you're a lawyer, you are by definition an officer of the court, so this is about the last thing I wanted to happen to me. And then I thought, if I need lawyers, I get lawyers, they do that better than I do. So instead I went to the army. I was proposed to or told to actually go to the officer school and do all that stuff, and from then on I went into intelligence. I was actually an intelligence officer assisting a 2-star general. And the story goes on. I'm summing up this quickly like my clients had wanted to hear it, is that after the military I was working in international finance in a lobbying firm in Switzerland, and one thing led to the other, and the next thing I knew I was approached by a senior guy. He was quite a lot older than I was then, and he turned out to be the CIA station chief of Switzerland. And he became a kind of a mentor to me, and he took me on some of his errands and explained to me what he's doing, what his cover job is, and how he moves through life and through Europe, etc., while doing what he's doing. And he explained to me exactly what he's doing. And I think one of the anecdotes that you had liked was how I got to see the gold under the airport in Zurich, Switzerland. Yes. And also, which is, by the way, what Jim Ricketts had looked at and reported on correctly, and he was very fascinated by all that stuff. Now, we didn't know whether this was Chinese gold, German gold, the famous German gold, or Swiss gold, or whoever's gold. And I also saw some of the gold in the mountains, of course. Essentially, the funny part was that it was the Swiss CIA station chief who showed me more than my own classification level was in the military, which was pretty high because I was with a 2-star general. So anyway, I found that interesting, and then from then on I quit working in business and I started studying astrology because I was interested in what I was explaining in one of my other videos, what I call the field and the energy, because, you know, after all, everything is energy. And so I found that my time would be better spent by studying astrology profoundly and preparing my research for my book Light Seeds. Is that about it? Or do you want more?
That's about it. And I think I found it highly interesting that the future that you ended up in Florida mirrored a lot of what you'd already experienced in Switzerland.
Yes, it is a mirror story, and this was not prepared, by the way. This is the field, or some would call chance or coincidence, but I don't believe in these things. This is how I met, for instance, Alexander Haig, or the astronaut Dr. Ed Mitchell, and who was, of course, also a military officer. You don't become a NASA pilot without having first been with the Air Force. So these guys and I had a few small things in common in the internal understanding of one's own behavior and of course about the world. And these two guys taught me a lot about what's going on in the world and what they think about it while I was studying astrology, while they knew that I was actually an astrologer, which they were very interested in. I mean, I did chart work with Dr. Mitchell and with General Al Haig after he was Secretary of State. So these guys took actually an interest in what I was doing, which I found amazing, because here I was this 35 or 40-year-old kid, and I had a good connection. And so this was a feedback for me, in the sense that I was told, continue, you have to become the best at what you do, which is a premise by Krishnamurti. And so it's in those years in Florida, actually, where I studied Krishnamurti, because I found you cannot actually practice astrology unless you have a really good understanding of Krishnamurti's work.
I totally agree. There's an energy exchange there that goes without saying. And that was another thing I found profoundly interesting, is that a lot of these business people that were at the previous meeting, they really didn't have a detailed understanding about astrology, but they could use the trends and the way you explained it. It was just really understandable for them to put it into action in their daily lives. I was fortunate enough to have been influenced by my great-grandparents that were guided in their farming by the planetary alignments. They used the Farmer's Almanac, which was predominantly about the visual planets, the sun and the moon, but by following those phases, I found that all their tasks ended up being in balance, which I think that's what we're trying to do in our lives. You certainly use a more complex chart for the planetary alignments, and it's showing a very intense period that is ahead of us. But then there again, there's also some alignments that create a balancing that is taking place. Could you elaborate more on these cycles and explain it to us in an understandable manner?
Yes, I'll try to be very short. So what I was saying in the meeting in great detail, and sum up now real quick, is that I look at the greater cycles of the outer planets because they define and mirror what mankind does and where we're at. So we started looking at Uranus in conjunction to Pluto in Virgo in the mid-1960s, 1964, 5, 1966. And the full cycle goes 84 years for Uranus, and you have to imagine the planets being like the hour hand or the minute hand on your watch. And so at a conjunction, they say both at 12 o'clock, and then an opposition, the faster one will be at 12:30. You understand? Opposition,
yes,
conjunction.
Yes.
Okay, so 1965 conjunction Uranus Pluto, and by 2047 Uranus will be back again in Virgo, but in opposition to Pluto, then in Pisces. So I was explaining that this defines to me the big picture of mankind as far as we who are alive today are concerned, because those souls, or whoever you want to call them, who came in the 50s, 60s, 70s, are the ones that are going to be around still until, let's say, 2040, 50. So this is a relevant cycle I'm talking about. That's why we mentioned that. And to finish this story up, basically what we see in 1965, this is where the first credit cards are produced and where credit and debt becomes the big ticket. And since then, our entire Western world is a pile-up of debt. And I'm saying that by 2020, and I agree with Jim St.Clair, we go through what he calls the Great Reset. That's clearly mirrored with Saturn, Jupiter, and Pluto at the end of Capricorn. we had discussed this last year in another video, so maybe you want to look at all of my videos to be able to see the whole context, so I don't have to repeat everything. And then by 2047, when this opposition of the two big guys, Pluto and Uranus, takes place, I feel this is where the entire society gets reset, where we will have a new technology breakthrough, maybe in time travel, where actually new and free energies and the entire technology of the black projects can become available to this world. And I would like to say, to sum this up, that we are going to have some pretty good alignments. Not everything is so drastic as the time we're in now. Right now, we're in spring 2014, and we're actually right in the middle of these most crucial Grand Cross square alignments, right, between Jupiter in Cancer, Pluto in Capricorn, and then Uranus, Aries, and Mars clicking in backwards in Libra. That's what the astrologers are so scared about, and I've been called the astrologer to the astrologers. And I'm explaining to them, you need to not be negative, because you're going to actually get exactly what you read into the planets. And as a matter of fact, this whole alignment is very productive, because a lot of good stuff is going on. For instance, Russia is taking a grip of its own affairs. I don't know if the Anglo-Americans understand, but Putin could easily checkmate their entire economy if they push the envelope further. So the astrology can be very good for some and can turn out very negative for others, but essentially you reap what you have sown. That's not the planet's fault. It's just the planets show the timing of the situation. And then what happens is that in 2026 and up to 2028, we will actually have some very nice alignments between Uranus in Gemini and Pluto in Aquarius. So Pluto symbolizing the controllers, the authorities, the secrecy, the government, etc. Now in Capricorn, Pluto then is moved over into Aquarius, and Uranus by then moved into Gemini. This creates a triangular aspect between those two planets. So I think that in the mid to late 2020s, we will actually witness some highly performing and positive times where breakthroughs in technologies and science are going to come about. And so this is, to make the long story short, why I'm preparing my clients to get ready for actual breakthrough time, for fantastic moments of going to the next level. Does any of that make some sense? I know it's
Yes.
long-winded, but
Yes, it does, because I think there's a general static in the air that so many people feel, and they think that there's something wrong with them personally. And once they get the understanding of the big picture, they realize that it's not just them, they're not in alone, and they can get together with community and create something better than what has been happening. There's such a much better future waiting for us. It's just up to us to do something about it. We have to get into action now.
yes, this is what we were explaining at the meeting, and that's what we're doing at these meetings when we have, for instance, a young man comes in to speak about motivational issues, about Krishnamurti, and another one is an economist who explains world economy, etc. And we also do energy work. Our entire work is not an information level transfer of knowledge, left brain activity, but actually our work is energy work. So I wanted to repeat what Einstein had said. Maybe we should never
Yes,
forget what
that would
Einstein
be
had
good.
said. He said everything is energy, and that's all there is to it. And you match the frequency of the reality you want, and then you cannot help but get that reality. And he said this is not philosophy or woo-woo spiritual new age kind of stuff. He said this is actually physics, and I said it's science. And in this very same vein, or this line of thought, Jim St.Clair told me something amazing in private when I was showing him our artwork we did with those 40 pictographs. He said, you know, this world is really bizarre and complex, but truth is simple and mathematical. So I think we can talk about the other issues in our next segment.
Okay, that sounds good. We'll continue on later then.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can you tell us, Michael, what you actually do as far as consulting with your clients other than the energy work?
Okay, that's profound, complex, because we do a lot of things. First, we base it on the astrology, right? Based on a birth chart, and if I have a precise time, I can actually do the mathematics for a client. It's all mathematics at that point, like we just explained, that things are actually simple and mathematical in terms of what the truth is. So based on a astrological birth chart, based on a minute and place, time, date of a person, or of an event, or of a corporation formation date, or of a nation's incorporation date, I can pretty clearly map out a strategy for a client together with a client. It's important to understand we work together. I'm not front loading the client and the client is not front loading me. We work together as to where, when, with whom, how the person can improve her life or his life or the company's life. Because oftentimes I work with clients whose decisions are in turn going to affect 100 or more people. So the work is one, energy work, where we're in the field, we're listening to the inner seeing abilities. In a way, I show them how to use intuition, right, to put it simple. And based on the astrology, we map the game plan. And as it then moves on, they ask me oftentimes, should they buy or sell or do this or the other, or should they be partnering up with such and such a company or sell an asset. And so of course I become an ongoing advisor for those who want to do that kind of work. And so essentially what we're doing is consulting at the high-end level, business advice, but it also involves coaching. At the meeting, for instance, we were discussing together what is imagination. Right, and I like to spell it I-Magi nation. That's the way I spelled it in the book, Light Seeds. You see, imagination is really all we need, and then we can forget thinking. This is what Krishnamurti explained. Thought is time, and our problem is that we're running this machine just way too often and way too long, and we're in overdrive of thinking. And so we discussed imagination, and we do exercises on imagination, the kinds of things we could work with in order to kickstart our own treasure inside of us and access the knowing we have genetically in our DNA in order to become more proactive and, more successful, in simple words.
Yes,
Makes
it's
sense?
it's very interactive. Could you also tell us again your websites?
I have two websites because I did the crystals as well a while back. That's stclaircrystals.com, STCLAIR crystals.com, and new we have stclairgold.com, STCLAIR gold.com. And in the new site, the gold site, this is where we actually do the interaction for the clients, the coaching, consulting, imagination games, also my updates, the Radiant Zone network, the astrology. I give yearly outlooks and monthly outlooks. I don't go down to weekly outlooks, but for clients I can do, if need be, day by day. What we also look at in our work, both on the websites and in person when we discuss issues, is that I have, due to the teachings I have and due to the experience I have now at age 55, the ability to show a client how to differentiate between what I would call intelligence, true intelligence, and disinformation. I mean, we live in an age of disinformation. It's clear to you that the war is on the human mind, and so we need to see clear. That's very important. 2015, 16, 17, the years of the great leveling and into the great reset, we have to be able to see crystal clear and know what's real or what is disinformation. And this is also something that I do with my clients. I like to do that a lot because that took me decades to figure out how to go about these things, and that's something I like to share with them when they're interested.
Yes, it's overwhelming with information overload that we have coming at us. It used to just be television, and now it's coming in on our phones. And that's one reason why I enjoy your Radiant Zone network, because you filter through all that for us, so it's a lot easier to access the information since you've already narrowed it down.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, that I like to do that. I enjoy this. And I'm always surprised that even very knowledgeable people are easily becoming, I guess, victims of disinformation. I mean, they come to me with videos out of the conspiracy scene, kind of like when my cats bring a mouse into the house and say, hey, have you seen this video, what do you think about that? So I'm tired of answering these questions, so I instead show them how to educate themselves as to how to recognize if something is, one, relevant, two, true or not true, and three, is it actually useful to them? Most of the stuff that people read on the internet has absolutely no bearing on their life. They would be more well advised and they would be wiser if they would, teach themselves about imagination, if they would spend time reading books. Krishnamurti has always explained to us how important it is to understand the language we use, the words we put into action, the energy the words carry, and why we need to read and learn. So I'm sometimes not so happy to see that all of our work has to be done in soundbite style, because today the toys are becoming smaller and smaller. And soon enough, like I said myself, in Light Seeds we will be doing this via telepathy, maybe over crystal slates. But essentially it's very important people read and are knowledgeable about what is relevant in their lives, which I think we can sum up as how to unlock and go into your imagination.
I totally agree.
That's it.
Thank you very much, and we'll continue this conversation on a later time, perhaps.
Sure, you're welcome. See clearly. So again, this is Krishnamurti. Only an empty mind can see clearly. Or as Bruce Lee said, who was a student of Krishnamurti, he always said, empty your mind and be like water, my friend.